When I first became a Christian, I was really eager to learn everything I could about what it meant to be a Christian, what were the beliefs and the practices that were expected of me. Because if Christianity was true, then I wanted to reap the benefit of living in that truth. But if it wasn't true, I wanted to find that out too, so that I could set it aside and move on to something else. One of the ways I tried to resolve that was just by reading the Bible. I was really interested in trying to find out what is true, and according to the Bible, the church is the pillar and foundation of truth. It's not some Jenga tower that will always be changing shape and constantly at risk of toppling over. And all of my experiences of interacting with the world around me has taught me that reality exists apart from me. It's not my own invention, and it doesn't bend to my own preference or will. I don't have a single experience that suggests that if I wish for something hard enough, that the world will just conform to those expectations. Every grief I wanted to avoid, every pleasure or reward I wanted, and every social interaction that I desired depended on me playing by the rules of reality, not reality playing by my rules. In other words, every experience of mine has taught me that truth is objective. So as I surveyed all of the different Christian denominations that claimed to be this church, this pillar of truth, it seemed obvious to me that if it were the true church, it would act like a messenger of truth. It would treat it with great care and concern for the gift that it is, and it wouldn't tamper with it or obfuscate it behind political agendas or appeals to populism. This is what I found so attractive about the Catholic Church. None of the other churches that I was attending claimed to be this kind of messenger, let alone acted like it. But the Catholic Church claimed to have this thing called infallibility and doctrinal integrity, and it had this teaching magisterium that had the authority to teach what is true. Well, if the church truly is the pillar of truth, then this is what I would expect to find. And as I scrutinized that claim, I found that the Catholic Church did remain consistent in its teachings. For example, when all the other denominations reversed their teaching on something like divorce and remarriage, she remained consistent. When all the other denominations flipped and flopped on questions of sexual morality and something like birth control, she was the only one that remained firm. So being able to rely on the church to guide me in my life has always been a source of comfort and liberation from all the anxiety and dead ends that a person might face without that roadmap. Now, since this news broke, there have been several commentators and philosophers and theologians and apologists that have jumped on this topic to help us make sense of it and understand it. Because if the church can simply change a teaching about what is true, then that might compete with this claim that she is the pillar of truth. So I'm late to the party to offer my 2 cents on this topic because I'm not a theologian or a philosopher, and I wasn't sure if I would have anything worth contributing to the conversation. And if you do want to know what much smarter and better educated people do have to say on it, then I would recommend checking out Dr. Edward Feser's article on First Things or Trent Horn's podcast on the topic for a couple of different perspectives. And if you do check them out, what you'll find are a lot of conversations around the subtle nuances of papal infallibility, and that the Catechism isn't an infallible document, and that this change doesn't mean that capital punishment is now intrinsically evil, which means that it doesn't contradict previous allowances for it. And that's all well and good, and it's helped me sort it out in my own mind. But after reading and listening to these commentaries by much smarter people than me, it's helped me realize that there is something that I can add to the conversation. Because for all the reasons that I described earlier, as a layperson who isn't a theologian, I need and desire for the church's teachings to be accessible and available for me so that I can live within those teachings. And in the past, that's what this thing has been for me. The Catechism is a reference and summary of what the church teaches. And while it isn't an infallible document, your average Catholic doesn't know what the heck that means. And the difference between inadmissible and intrinsically evil is so subtle that for faithful Catholics just trying to keep up, they might as well be the same thing. And it's no wonder that the media has jumped all over this with headlines about how Pope Francis has just changed church teaching. If this represents church teaching and they just changed it, then it's pretty hard to correct those headlines. And if the Pope can change this teaching, the thinking might go, what's to stop him from changing any other teaching that we don't like? So regardless of what you think about the topic of capital punishment, the perception of this precedent for your average Catholic and non-Catholic for that matter is that church teaching can change. And that's not true. Now, again, if you take the time to explain what is and isn't infallible and how this doesn't represent a doctrinal change, then you can maybe clear up some of those misconceptions. But the fact that that is such an uphill battle should remind us that we should be taking way more care with this kind of thing. The Catholic faith can't be something that is only accessible to ivory tower academics and theologians who can grasp these kinds of nuances. But developments like this make it less accessible to everyday Catholics like me, and it just ends up creating a lot of confusion, which is what the Catechism was supposed to dispel. When it was published, there were a lot of claims about what the church taught, and so it was supposed to clear up all the confusion, and thank God that it did. But with tampering like this, it seems like a regression back into that confusion. The other risk with something like this is that it has the potential to undermine Pope Francis's papacy, because we've been hearing a lot from him about how we need to be less rigid and less black and white about moral issues like divorce and remarriage and the reception of sacraments. Okay, so maybe there does need to be a greater appreciation for the nuances that can exist in certain circumstances. But if that's true, then it really doesn't help to then turn around and address another moral issue like capital punishment and discard all the previously held nuances that were in place in favor of a very rigid and black and white declaration about it. So for my part, I'm going to stick with this version of the Catechism and hope that there aren't any more unnecessary changes to it. And in summary, I'd like to say that the Pope and the bishops are supposed to be shepherds of Christ's church, as mandated by Christ himself. Well, as a member of that flock, revisionist alterations like this make me feel lost. We need our shepherds to be clear and to offer accessible teaching to us, free from all of this confusion. Otherwise, I fear that many of us will be scattered to the wilderness. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed that, then please consider subscribing and liking, and come find me on Facebook and Twitter. It's a huge help when you do that. It helps us get these videos in front of more and more people. And a big thank you goes out to you, Catholic, for presenting these videos. And if you want to support the making of these videos, then please consider supporting my work as a digital media and marketing expert. My company, Holdsworth Design, specializes in branding, web and graphic design, marketing, social media, videography, and all that kind of good stuff. So if you know of a parish, a diocese, a ministry, or a business that needs help in those areas, then please send them our way, and I'm sure we can help them out.